Well, hi everyone. I'm going to do another update here today on the Washington Bridge in Rhode Island, and then I think I'm going to be good on this bridge for a while unless something crazy comes out in the next month, which is always possible. But in this video, I'm going to really drill down on the condition of the Eastbound Bridge, as well as put the condition of this bridge into context with other bridges throughout Rhode Island, also in neighboring Massachusetts. I think that's a state that would be a good basis for comparison, as well as states much farther away, but with much larger inventory of bridges in their system. So to start this video, I want to send a shout out to the Functional 3D company. Their website is F3D Scans. In addition to drone work, they do 3D scans for engineering and construction projects using a LiDAR point cloud. So you can see the image on the left is a LiDAR point cloud, and then the CAD model on the right. Very interesting technology. So Chris did the drone work for me as a complimentary service, so thank you very much. There's a link in the description if you want to learn more about his company. What I like about this footage is right off the bat, you could see Providence, and then we'll pan around here to East Providence. This drone flight was done on Friday, November 29th, so the day after Thanksgiving. You see 3 lanes of traffic going each way on the existing eastbound bridge with a concrete median that was installed to separate the traffic. We go to East Providence. So I was able to obtain the inspection reports for the eastbound bridge, and I did a video about it a couple of weeks ago, and then I made these reports available to local media contacts that I have there. And I'm going to go through this in detail, but I also put in another public request for the remaining inspection reports, because my initial request was for the last 10 years. And then when I saw the bridge was rated as only fair condition in 2017, which was 9 years after the construction of this bridge, it got me wondering, well, what did the initial report say? You know, some people were telling me that if a bridge such as this one is rebuilt on the existing foundations, it may have a lower rating right out of the gate. So I received the remaining inspection reports between 2009 up to 2015. So I'll go through that here. But you could see in 2009, the bridge was rated as good condition. And then 2017 down to fair. Stayed in fair condition 2021, 2023, 2024, fair condition. So as a result of this video that I did, word was getting out to the local media about, hey, why is this bridge that we're so heavily reliant upon only rated in fair condition? And actually, I was contacted by investigative reporter Gabrielle Caracciola, and she did an in-depth interview with me, but also she did a story where she went to RIDOT director Peter Alviti to ask him about his thoughts on the fair bridge condition rating. So I'm just going to play that segment.
People have raised some concerns just about that eastbound bridge as everybody's driving over it. Everyone's obviously wants to make sure everything's safe. There was an inspection back in 2017, less than a decade after it opened, where it was only rated in fair condition rather than good condition. Is that normal for less than a decade-old bridge to not be in good condition?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's typical across the state?
It's typical across the United States.
How long would, it stay in like good condition, fair condition, poor condition? If less than 10 years it's in?
Depends on the structure, it depends on the complexity of the structure, it depends on how many structural elements are involved and what other complexities, the environment around it, whether it's over water or over land. There are a number of conditions that feed into that.
Okay, it may be normal in Rhode Island. You know, I was asked what to make of that fair rating. My feeling was it was a little early to have a bridge that had been completely reconstructed except for the foundation to be in fair condition after just 9 years. Well, we know it was after 8 years because the 2009 report had a good condition rating for the bridge. So if you want to check out the full interview that I did with Gabrielle, I've got a link in the description. So as I mentioned, I'm putting forth a lot of effort to generate these public records requests. I still have several pending with Rhode Island DOT as well as other states. So if you would like to help me support those activities, I've got a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, which is a great way to support these efforts. So if you would consider it, I'd appreciate it. So let's go through and just try and put it into context numerically what a fair condition rating could mean for the state of Rhode Island and for other states. Massachusetts has nearly 6,000 bridges in their inventory and is ranked near the bottom for condition and cost effectiveness of its highway system. Rhode Island is pretty much at the bottom. It's 49th out of 50 states for road quality in 2024. So I wanted to drill down on what was really behind those overall rankings. So I went to the Federal Highways National Bridge Inventory database, and I pulled down data for various states, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, as well as a state in the Midwest. And this database has three classifications. It's either good, fair, or poor. And you can just see where that falls within the overall band. So fair condition is pretty much middle of the pack. So let's look at Rhode Island. Rhode Island has a total inventory of just under 800 bridges in their system. So the average age of bridges rated in fair condition is the difference between 1963 and today. So 61 years is the average age for the bridges in fair condition in Rhode Island. The youngest one was built in 2023, and they have two of those actually that have a fair rating after only a year. And the fair condition bridges account for 62% of Rhode Island's total. The bridges that are rated good, the average year is 1999. The youngest is 2023, and they had a total of 179 rated in good condition. And then poor quality, the average year of construction was 1950, so 74 years ago. The youngest was 2007, and the total number of bridges in Rhode Island's system with poor condition were 119. All right, so let's just look at the overall percentages. 62% for fair, 23% for good, and 15% for poor, and compare it to Massachusetts. Very similar overall percentages, but look at the bridges rated fair condition. They're on average 9 years older than Rhode Island's fair condition bridges. And their good condition bridges on average are, again, much older than those of Rhode Island, as well as the bridges that have poor condition. The average year of construction there was 1945, so 79 years ago. So overall, you can see that Massachusetts bridges compare better than those of Rhode Island, and you have similar traffic volumes, similar climate, similar use of road salts in the winter. So I think it's a pretty good comparison. And keep in mind, Massachusetts has nearly 6,000 bridges in their inventory. When Director Alviti thinks that having a bridge go from good to fair condition in 9 years is typical, the numbers say otherwise. It shows to me, based on these results, that Rhode Island is actually well behind even its neighboring state of Massachusetts, which is not rated highly in and of itself. So I thought, well, let's look at another state. Let's look at Kansas. There's 25,000 bridges in their inventory. And they also have rough winters in Kansas. They salt the roads in the winter. Their percentage of fair condition rated bridges is 45%, so about 20% less than what you see in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. 55% of their bridges are rated as good condition, and less than 1% are rated as poor condition. And that's with 25,000 bridges. So what are the main issues? Just based on my study of the Westbound and Eastbound Washington Bridge, it's largely due to lack of maintenance. Here's a 2009 inspection report that shows backed off anchor bolt nuts on the base plates, the bearing plates. Already in 2009, you have these scupper drains filling up with debris. Here's 2024, same deal. Anchor bolt nuts are backed off. Even more junk in the scuppers. And this is particularly concerning because the Eastbound Bridge used what they call weathering steel in its reconstruction. And the idea with weathering steel is that there's an oxide layer that forms, a rust layer that's stable. They refer to it as a patina. But that rust layer is only stable if it isn't wet all the time. And if you have it wet all the time, it'll continue to corrode. And if you have road salts that are dissolved in the water, then the rate of corrosion is greatly accelerated. So when you have clogged drains on the Eastbound Bridge, you have to wonder where that water is going and what kind of material is it coming in contact with. Is it reinforcing steel in the concrete? Is it the structural steel for the bridge itself? It's quite concerning. And just to give you an idea of what road salts and lack of drainage can do to a bridge that has weathering steel structural members. Look no further than the Fern Hollow Bridge collapse in Pennsylvania outside of Pittsburgh that occurred January 28th, 2022. You can see there was a city bus, a dual bus that was crossing the bridge when it collapsed. And I did a video about this Fern Hollow Bridge collapse. Now I'm just going to play an excerpt from that video. It's about a minute long, but it shows dramatic footage of this bridge collapsing behind the bus as it was crossing the bridge. See, they nearly made it across the bridge. Okay, so they're going eastbound, and if you look at the railing on the left, you'll start to see it drop as the bridge deck collapses. Now here's the front-facing view. The bridge is literally collapsing behind them as they're traveling. And he was able to stop before he went over the big lip from the end of the bridge deck. They pointed out clogged or basically silted up drains on the bridge deck. And this is particularly problematic when road salts are used like they are for this bridge in this region of the country in the winter. And you could see the type of corrosion that resulted. So the runoff water full of salt, instead of going down the drains, would go through nooks and crannies in the bridge deck and run down these support legs, these steel support legs. And it's important to note that these steel supports were made of what they call weathering steel. So if you've seen transmission line poles that looked like a kind of a fuzzy orange texture and color driving around, that's what they call weathering steel. Okay, so a lot of commonalities: lack of maintenance, lack of corrective action when deficiencies were noted in inspection reports. It's really not an acceptable situation whatsoever. So RIDOT has been undertaking a series of repairs to the construction joints on the east side of the eastbound bridge, and they've done this since October. And it appears that the need for these repairs is far greater than RIDOT is making the public aware of. This article was out of the Boston Globe, showed the condition of some of these joints. Again, keep in mind, this bridge was built in 2008. So this is the area of the joints that we're talking about that I had inferred previously just based on local media reports. And then I submitted a public records request and got the actual repair records for several nights in October 2024. You see they were working on the 21st, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 28th, 29th, 30th. A lot of work going on out there. And this is from one of the inspection reports that shows the location of the joints that were being repaired. And then this was a news report on December 2nd that indicates that yet more lane closures for maintenance were going to be required, presumably again for these joints. Now, I'm recording this video on Friday, December 6th. I'm going to keep this video in the hopper for a couple of weeks because I'm going to be traveling, but I've got some things that I'm going to predict here, and by the time this video goes public, you'll see how accurate I was with some of these predictions. So let's get into the status of the design build contract to replace the Westbound Washington Bridge. So the RFP went out in October. RIDOT announced that 4 firms were shortlisted. You have the joint venture of American Bridge and MLJ, Hallmar International, Skanska Aetna joint venture, and Walsh Construction Company. So looking at the overall schedule, RIDOT's going to announce the short list of 2 firms to compete for the eventual contract for this design build project by December 11th, 2024. So this will be right before this video airs. So let's look at who's likely to get this job. So as I mentioned, American Bridge, MLJ, American Bridge is a top-notch company. Full disclosure, I've worked with them on many projects, testing deep foundations during construction. I never worked with MLJ. Hallmar, I know nothing about. I just know they're out of New York. Skanska, a Swedish construction conglomerate, they've been picking up a series of bridge construction projects in Rhode Island well above the budget estimates by Rhode Island DOT. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars over the estimate. So I don't know if they're too busy to really take on the Washington Bridge, but I suspect that they have a lot of momentum in terms of getting these projects that may carry them forward on this Washington Bridge project. And they're partnered with Aetna. Aetna currently has the contract for the demo of the Westbound Washington Bridge, and it's been quite a windfall for them. You know, RIDOT estimated that the demo contract was worth about $30 million. They ended up awarding it for $45 million, which included some early completion bonuses. And because of a forced demo stoppage from Rhode Island's Attorney General for about a month, from September to October, and the addition of the requirement to demolish the existing bridge piers as well as to cut the piles 2 foot below the mud line, that contract now has ballooned to nearly $100 million and has become the critical path on being able to actually start construction on this project, because they now have till the end of 2025 or early 2026 to complete their demo work. And the design build contract is supposed to be awarded next summer in 2025. So they've got roughly 5 or 6 months plus of design work before they can actually get out to the job site and have free access to start doing work related to new construction. And I will say, having Aetna out there already with crews already being available there with a lot of equipment, those situations can provide a huge advantage for subsequent work that's bid out in the area, or in this case, competed for on a design build basis. So I know nothing about Aetna and their capabilities, but the fact that they were involved with the Westbound Bridge and were named in a lawsuit by Rhode Island DOT and more than doubled their contract for the demolition and have plenty of time to do it, apparently, seems that they are pretty well dialed in terms of getting work in Rhode Island. And then you have Walsh Construction, again, a company I've worked with many times in the past doing construction phase foundation testing. They're a highly capable firm, and sure they'll compete hard for this work, but again, only 2 firms are going to be shortlisted. So my prediction is Skanska, Aetna is going to be one of them, and then the other is just sort of a wild card in my mind. And this article mentions from WPRI the $700,000 cost for the pause of the demolition. Rhode Island's Attorney General said that that stoppage was to, quote, preserve evidence needed in the lawsuit against 13 defendants relative to the Westbound Washington Bridge. But it is not at all clear what was actually done during that 1-month stoppage. Did anyone actually visit the job site relative to gathering information pertinent to the lawsuit? Was material taken away with careful records kept of what was taken and where it was stored? There's been no reports of any such activity. The reports I've seen is indicating that they just stopped for a month and then started up again, and wasn't a lot of explanation either before, during, or after that whole stoppage. So let's run some more drone footage here. And I thought, you know, this project was more or less an emergency project. There's no work going on here the day after Thanksgiving. And I can understand people wanting the day off after Thanksgiving. In fact, I had my staff take the day off. But when you're working on emergency projects, we fully expect to work on the Fridays after a holiday or on the weekend, and there's nothing going on here. And you contrast that with the situation in Cincinnati. They're trying to get a bridge deck span replaced. Well, not only the bridge deck, but also the steel girders on an emergency basis. And they did work the day after Thanksgiving. Some great drone footage here. Again, just, I can't even really tell that there's been much progress in the demolition since the last time I had a drone flight commission about 3 weeks ago, actually closer to a month. All right, so Go Local did a story about 4 companies being shortlisted for this initial phase of the RFP, but they also note that you still have this federal investigation in the background relative to Westbound Bridge. So that's the other shoe that's going to drop. And it's going to be interesting to see with the new administration if there's going to be, I guess, what you could call regime change in the state of Rhode Island, and in particular with Rhode Island DOT in terms of how they've been administering these projects. So we got a little more footage here. Nice calm day relative to the winds. So let me know what you all think in the comments section. This is quite a saga, and I'm going to stay on this story, but again, I'm going to stay away from the political angle, but there's certainly a lot of interesting developments relative to this bridge project in particular. I want to send a shout out to the channel members. I really appreciate your ongoing support, as well as those of you who've provided super thanks. That's another great way to support the channel. I'm going to roll credits at the end. As I've done with a lot of recent videos, I want to mention a book here by Annie Jacobson, Operation Paperclip. This is about the U.S. efforts, primarily, Allied efforts, to wrangle all of the German scientists at the end of World War II, whether it was to work on rocket programs or chemical and biological warfare research. And it's a very interesting book. I came away with considerably less admiration for von Braun as a person, but it's a very interesting ethical question. Is, the United States was in competition with the Soviet Union to develop these capabilities, more so than the Soviet Union. And so it was an all-out start of the Cold War, really trying to wrangle these scientists. So this book gives a lot of great background into what was going on during that time period. So check it out. I've got a variety of videos coming up. If you have any thoughts, please let me know in the comments, and please stay tuned for future videos.